Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to hear the story of Great Pacific Gold. As Ron mentioned in his introduction, we are focused on gold-copper resource development, predominantly in Papua New Guinea. It's an exploration stage company with some key projects in and around K92's operating mine, K92. I will make some forward-looking statements during the presentation. So just quickly, a little bit of history about the company. This company has been in existence for just over 4 years. It started its life as a company called Fosterville South, focused on assets in Victoria in Australia, and as the name of the company would imply, a fairly substantial land package immediately south of Agnico Eagle's Fosterville mine. For about 3 years, the company continued to build a land package in and around Victoria, and then recently in late 2023, we're presented with an opportunity to acquire some very interesting assets in Papua New Guinea. And the founders of this company, John Lewins, who's currently the CEO of K92, and Brian Suslarchuk, who put together the deal to originally buy the K92 mine from Barrick back in 2013, were the founders of K92. They saw an opportunity to get back and acquire some really interesting assets in PNG. And over the last year, the focus of the company has shifted out of Australia, now into Papua New Guinea. I've been with the company as the CEO since the start of August, so just about 3 months now. And we really tried to bring a more focused approach to the portfolio. As you'll see in the presentation today, we're focused on predominantly 2 assets. You see them here on this map on the right-hand side of the slide. Kessar is immediately adjacent and northwest of the Kora deposit the K92 is currently mining. And then Wild Dog, which is an asset that's located on the island of New Britain in the province of East New Britain, again in Papua New Guinea. And we'll spend most of the presentation today touching on those 2 assets. So just quickly, a little corporate snapshot. Just 2 or maybe 3 points to make on here. First and foremost, certainly insiders and our strategic shareholders, those being people like Brian, who's no longer an insider of the company. We certainly have a significant stake, owning about 15% of the company, so our interests are aligned with shareholders. We are reasonably well financed right now. At the end of the last quarter, we had just under 6 million Canadian in treasury, and as you'll see, we plan to spend about 1.5 million of that on a diamond drilling program here in Q4. And then as well, just touching on market cap, at the time we printed this book, we've since seen a nice little movement in our stock price. We're currently trading at a market cap of about 75 million Canadian. So again, focused on the PNG assets here. I won't spend a lot of time telling the audience about Papua New Guinea, other than to say I believe it's a very good place to do business. We've got a supportive government structure. Only recently, the Prime Minister was actually acting as the Minister of Mines as well. There's been a Minister of Mines that's announced recently, but very supportive structures, permitting timelines that are very manageable, and generally a community that's supportive of mining and wants foreign direct investment in the country. For that reason, there's a number of operating mines in the region, Barrick and Zijin, obviously with Porgera, now the old Newcrest assets, Lahir, now obviously with Newmont. And then you can see where our flagship assets are located here, Kessar and Arau, immediately adjacent to the newest mine in PNG, the K92 mine operated by K92. And again, Wild Dog, located on the island of East New Britain, in a little different location, but very similar geology. So I'm going to start with Kessar. You're looking at a map here on this slide of the region in and around the K92's operations. Their concessions are in the center of this map. Kessar is the concessions located in the top left corner of that. The important thing to point out on this slide, that red line that cuts across at about a 45-degree angle, trending to the northwest, southeast, that's the structural main corridor that hosts these very high-grade epithermal and massive sulfide quartz vein structures. For example, you've seen K92's recent quarter, which is outstanding. They're feeding their mill with 0.6, 0.7% copper and between 10 and 15 grams per ton gold, producing a copper flotation concentrate and gravity recovering gold in the form of doré. So this is very high-grade structures. We're looking to drill Kessar here, which we'll talk about in a minute, on the same vein structures that are currently being mined about 6 kilometers away at Kora. We are actually slightly closer to K92's processing plant than the actual mine portal at K92. So this is a very close proximity to an operating mine. Although it is a greenfield discovery, which you'll see in a minute, we can kind of consider this brownfield exploration given there's an underground mine operating right beside it. Just taking a little closer look, this is about a 5 kilometer by 5 kilometer square area, which we've investigated as a follow-up to a mag anomaly, which you can see on the bottom part of that graph in that black circle outlined. These are soil samples that were carried out in 2 campaigns this year. Just over 1,000 samples taken over the 25 kilometers squared, if you like. So it's a big target area. Mostly concentrated around that western vein zone, which you see on the bottom of that map, where most of our work was done, mostly because it's the easiest area to access, but also because it had some very interesting artisanal workings. And you can see here some of the soil results were spectacular. So these are 35.7, 47.6 grams per ton gold in soils. So this is not drilling, these are soil samples. You're used to looking at soils in ppb. This is ppm, 1,000 times higher. There's very high-grade veining structures, outcropping, and seeing in artisanal workings. If we sample any of those outcrops, we're running north of 100 grams, and in some of the artisanal workings, over 200 grams per ton gold in rock chip samples. So this was a high priority target for the company in terms of a next phase of drilling. We're going to focus initially on where you see the most of the soil work there, where you see that orange arrow, and the target is called Antaruno. That's where we've got most of our soil sampling results, and it coincident with the mag anomaly. We just recently completed a structural mapping exercise over that area where we sent geologists on the ground to map out, again, telling you the scale of this map that you're looking at. I know the numbers are small on your screen. It's about a 1.3, 1.4 kilometer wide area by about 1.1 kilometers long on the north-south section. What you're looking at here is soil results again, and this is just a heat map of gold soils. So the red areas obviously being the highest grades. You can see in that area various lines squiggling across it. Those are the squiggly lines that cut at a 45-degree angle. That's the main vein set stockwork zones. The same areas that are very similar to what's being mined at K92. We've got about 1,000 meters of zone strike length identified here, with those dotted lines being mineralized minor and major veins cutting across that stockwork. This is the perfect structural setting to find a deposit. What we're targeting here in the drilling is going to be cutting across those main stockwork zones. And what we see here is very similar like you see at Cora. You see very narrow veins, 0.1 to 0.6 meters in width, extending for, in this case, a kilometer, with very high grades, like north of 100 grams per ton. And these occur in parallel sheets that form, the geologists call them a swarm, that to make up a very dense stockwork that contains a series of these veins that vary in width between 5 and 15 meters. And that's the mining widths that are being mined underground at Cora now. So we just recently announced, based on that surface mapping work, an expanded drill program here. We were originally planning to drill 3,000 meters. We've now expanded that to 5,000. We have 2 diamond drill rigs that have been mobilized to site. We've got the drillers camp prepared and is being fully manned right now. The drilling crews mobilized the 2 drills to the first 2 pads over last weekend. We're busy assembling them right now, and we expect to be fully drilling with both those drills by early next week. We'll get this 5,000 meters hopefully finished up by the end of the year before Christmas, certainly the bulk of it. And again, the main target here, you can see there's 13 drill holes and traces all cutting across those main stockwork areas. Targeting it at depth, this is a very mountainous area, so we're stepping back and drilling into the mountainside, cutting across the vein stockwork. As you probably know, mining at K92's operations is, although underground mine, it doesn't go down. When you go into the mine, you actually go straight into the deposit, and then they're mining upwards, actually. So it is a very mountainous region where the mine portal is located, and then a very flat valley where the processing plant and tailings storage facility, an ideal place to build a mine. So Kessar is going to generate the bulk of our news flow for the coming year. I'd envision these 2 drills will be very busy here for quite some time. we could have them drilling here for the whole year in 2025. But in parallel to that, the company also holds the Wild Dog project, which I mentioned at the outset, located on the island of New Britain. This in itself would be a tremendous standalone project, a company maker in any other vehicle. It's a past producing mine that saw some relatively small mining operations, mining high-grade epithermal zones, very similar in geology to what we're chasing at Cora. The mining, this is the pit that you see here, so not much of a pit, it's more of a road cut. Mining the top 10 meters of the oxides. They were feeding a heap leach, if you can believe it, with almost 20 gram per ton gold material, which worked very well until they hit about 8 meters in depth, where they ran into about 0.5 to 1% copper, which is very classic of this area. The heap leach, of course, no longer worked, or it worked very well at leaching the copper and not so well at the gold. This was in the time frame of 2012-13 when the gold price came off, and that company eventually ended up going bankrupt. The company's been in the hands of the MRA, the regulatory authorities. A private company called Wild Dog was able to acquire it in an auction. And recently, Great Pacific Gold acquired Wild Dog, as I mentioned at the outset. So we've just secured the exploration license, is now in hand, finalized for this, which was a process. I could tell you there are a lot of major mining companies trying to jump ahead of the queue from us in this regard, because it is a 11-kilometer strike length of high-grade epithermal zones that we know continue at depth. Again, almost vertical structures, some of them 5 to 15 meters wide. Only about 500 to 800 meters of that 11 kilometers has been mined to very shallow depths. And also adjacent to this, there's a nice, about 1,000-meter diameter, large copper-gold porphyry outcropping, which is likely the source of this epithermal vein system. So this is a massive project by itself. It's a major undertaking. We're currently not doing any exploration work. We've just established a 20-kilometer access road, and we're expecting that we're going to be starting to do some exploration work here in early 2025. Just finally, a lot of people are asking about funding for this. We do have still a tremendous asset package in Victoria. This is a map of the state of Victoria. Melbourne's in the middle, at the bottom center of this map. In the middle of the heart of this, all these green concessions are all GPAC concessions. Some of you may have seen, we announced last week that we're going to be divesting of an asset called Reedy Creek. That's immediately to the north of Sunday Creek, which is currently being drilled by Southern Cross. The company, I believe, has about a $700 million market cap currently on an ASX listing based on that exploration project. There's a 50,000-meter drill program underway at about 10 kilometers south of where we've had some nice little intercepts, things like 4 meters at 30 grams, close to surface from some shallow drilling that was done here in 2022 and 2023. So this is sort of the first cab off the ranks in terms of divesting of assets. We hope we can use some of these funds to help fund our exploration at the projects like Kessar and Wild Dog. And more significantly, we still have a couple of core assets here that we're not quite yet divesting. The main one being the old Fosterville South, which formed the company initially. Those yellow concessions on the left-hand, the west-hand side of this map, that's Agnico Eagle's Fosterville mine and their tenements. The green concessions to the south, we believe we have a Fosterville lookalike. Some of you who are following the company may remember there's about 5 kilometers of open pitable, modest grade, 1 to 2 gram per ton material with a nice high-grade discovery hole drilled at about 150 meters depth of 8 meters at 109 grams per ton. Similar geology, very complicated, very nuggety, much like you see at Fosterville. That's let us shift our focus to easier targets in PNG, but there's still a tremendous amount of value housed in these assets in Victoria that we'll look to divest of in an orderly fashion and monetize for shareholder value. So just to conclude, why invest in GPAC? I think, as I mentioned at the outset, you've got a management team here that's aligned with shareholders with a significant equity stake in the company. We've got a tremendous land package of projects. I think a focus now on Kessar, where we expect to be generating high-grade drill results for the coming year at least, located immediately adjacent to K92's operating mine, and then with a Wild Dog being groomed for the potential to become the flagship of the company longer term. And we're busy. Team is still something we're working on. I myself have put 3 different mines into production. Ron and I know each other from a long time ago from those types of experiences. We're busy putting the right people in the right jobs, and I believe we're going to be in a good position to execute on this for shareholders. Thank you.